Good morning, everybody, and a warm welcome to this Royal London webinar where we're going to be counting down to the new Consumer Duty. I'm Gregor Sked, Intermediary Protection, Development and Technical Manager, and I'm absolutely delighted to be joined today by my colleague Shelley Reid, Senior Intermediary Protection, Development and Technical Manager. Shelley, it's an absolute pleasure to have you here. Now, over the course of the next hour, we've got some really exciting content lined up for you. Of course, all of which has been designed to help you get ready now for the shift that this new Consumer Duty is expected to make throughout our industry. We'd love to hear your questions. So if you've got any burning questions, do pop them into the chat box. We'll do our best to answer as many questions as we can at the very end. But don't worry if you don't get a chance to cover your question. We will be following up with all questions asked after the session today. And of course, if you do have questions after the session today, please do just get in touch with your usual Royal London contact. So, thought of spending the next hour hearing about the new Consumer Duty, I'm assuming to everybody is thrilling and exciting stuff. So of course we've got some thrilling content, but we've also got some TPD-able content for you as well, which I'm assuming is very important to everybody for today's session. To help us do that, we've got 4 learning objectives. Now our 4 learning objectives are quite straightforward. So firstly, to be able to understand the key changes that are underpinning this new Consumer Duty, to have an understanding of what the new rules and guidance will mean for protection advisors, to have an awareness of what advisors like yourself are actually saying about this new Consumer Duty and how they see their business adjust and how prepared they currently feel, and whether they've got any plans in place to get themselves ready in time. And finally, to be confident using some of the tools and various different solutions that we offer at Royal London that will of course help get you ready now. Now, we've got quite a lot to get through over the next hour. So between Shelley and myself, we're going to talk a little bit at the beginning about what is this new Consumer Duty. We're going to look at some of this new research that we've got from Royal London, and we're going to talk about signposting protection. We're then going to talk a little bit about multi-benefit protection solutions, trusts and beneficiary nomination, a variety of other different tools that can help support your business. We're going to also talk a lot about support services today as well. A really important aspect of protection is some of these valuable support services that clients can use. We're going to take a little look at some of the Royal London features in there. And we're going to put all this into practice and leave you with some hopefully top tips to take away from our session today. So what is this new Consumer Duty that everybody's talking about? Well, for those that haven't read the initial 56-page consultation paper or the best-selling sequel to that consultation paper, which contained, I believe, about 243 pages of feedback from memory on the FCA's proposals, don't worry, because I'm going to do my best attempt at putting the new Consumer Duty into a bit of a nutshell. Now, I like to look at the new Consumer Duty as set up in 3 parts. Now we've got the first, which is a new principle called the consumer principle. And it's really this principle that will now take the number of principles for business up to 12. Welcome news for anybody studying for an RO1 exam in the future. And remember, it's these principles for business that are fundamental obligations for all authorized firms. Now, this new consumer principle applies the standard that firms must act to deliver good outcomes for retail customers. Now, sitting underneath this new principle, there's 3 cross-cutting rules. Now, these are designed to help really set a level understanding for how firms should behave in order to achieve the objective that this new principle is focusing on. Now, these 3 cross-cutting rules are, firstly, firms must act in good faith toward retail customers, firms must avoid foreseeable harm to retail customers, and firms must enable and support retail customers to pursue their financial objectives. And what we're going to do throughout this session today is refer back to these 3 cross-cutting rules quite a lot, because when it comes to protection, protection is a really influential role to play in helping us get ready for these rules. And then sitting underneath these 3 cross-cutting rules are 4 outcomes. And really this is about helping set more detailed expectations of the types of conduct required. Now, the 4 outcomes are firstly products and services. So are all the products and services for retail customers actually fit for purpose? And this is actually aimed, as is the whole duty, at both the firms involved in the building of products, so the manufacturer of these types of products, but also those that distribute them as well. So both manufacturers and distributors, this whole duty applies to them. So that's products and services. Secondly, we've got price and value. So are retail customers open to receiving a bad customer outcome if they're sold something that is deemed poor value for money? We've got consumer understanding next up. So this relates to the communications with customers, and it really builds on the current communications must be clear, fair, and not misleading requirement that's within Principle 7. And we've got consumer support. So this is all about how customers actually interact with the products and services provided or sold through the firm. And also within here, we need to consider vulnerable customers. So are vulnerable customers being disadvantaged? What about the ease of interacting with the types of products and services that they're available to access? So the big question on everyone's lips is who should be taking note about all of this? Well, really everybody should. There's no hiding from what this new consumer duty is trying to achieve. It doesn't matter if you're a mortgage-only advisor, a protection specialist, a wealth advisor, or even a product provider like Royal London. To some extent, you will all need to look at our processes and understand if and where alterations might need to be made. Now, as we await the final set of rules that are yet to be published by the FCA, we do know that April 2023 is the expected date by which firms need to be fully compliant with these changes. So there is going to be a bit of an implementation period. Now, the final rules, the rules from the FCA are due to be announced at the end of July this year, which does leave us with about a 9-month implementation period. And as I said, that is the time by which the FCA expect firms to have fully implemented their practical steps to achieving this new consumer duty. So less than 9 months away, the big question is how prepared are you? Even if you read the FCA regulatory papers, it's a bit of light reading at night. The new consumer duty has got some quite considerable amount of meat on the bones, and it shouldn't be considered as an easy to digest read. So where do you start? Well, some really handy next steps have been provided by the Association of Mortgage Intermediaries, or AMI for short. And what they've suggested, and this is purely for guidance only, are some of these steps that we're going to look at on this checklist could be a good way to help start preparing for April 2023. So what are these new checklist ideas? Well, firstly, map out the different stages of the client's journey through their eyes. And this is regardless of your specialism. As we said, if you're a mortgage specialist, a protection or GI specialist, a wealth advisor, or even a product provider, how do you arrange meetings? What information is provided to the clients? Is it done digitally? Are hard copies provided? How do clients interact with you, and what does it look like for them? Think about the firm that you're working for's compliance monitoring frameworks. How do you evidence discussions that you've had with clients? And throughout the products that you distribute, how do clients achieve fair value for money? Do you consider how the products and services offer value to clients? What might restrict clients from accessing that value for money? And how much are clients paying for the products and services they receive? Big thing we're looking at here is, does low price mean fair value? If something is unsuitable but cheap, does that mean it's offering some value to clients? And ensuring that we've got an overview of our current MI will also be a big step in the right direction. We're in a world led by data, and the FCA are really planning to take a data-led approach with its supervision and ultimately enforcement of this new consumer duty as well. And within the last consultation paper, this FCA did state that the firm's board or equivalent management body will be responsible for assessing whether it's delivering good outcomes for customers. So hopefully taking a few steps here will help us get prepared and start to help you plan your roadmap to getting ready for this new consumer duty. So, Shelley, a lot to digest there, little time to do it in, and there's undoubtedly going to be a lot of questions being asked as to, well, what next? What is the feeling, from advisors and the advisor community towards what this new consumer duty might mean for them and their business?
Thank you, Gregor. Yes, absolutely. So over the next few slides, let's have a look at what you as advisors have told us about how you currently understand or view the advisor impact. Given firms will need, as you said, Gregor, to be fully compliant to the changes by April 23, this does offer advisors a mere 9 months to fully interpret these requirements, to assess how their business practices need to evolve if they do, and then put any appropriate changes in place. And we do fully understand this could be a significant understanding for some firms. So as we count down to the final rules and their implementation, we wanted to understand how advisors see their business adjusting, if at all, how prepared they currently feel, and whether they have any plans in place to get themselves ready in time. So this is what advisors have told us. So when the new rules come into play, over half of advisors tell us they recognise that they'll need to make some changes to their business practices. The vast majority of the advisor population expect these adjustments to be small, with only a very tiny group, just 2%, anticipating the need for a significant level of change. And just over a quarter of advisors don't expect to make any changes to their business practices at all. And over half of the advisors who fall into this group believe this is because they already comply with the new rules. But having said that, a third of these advisors admit they have yet to read the FCA's consultation paper. But perhaps most worrying, almost 1 in 5 advisors say they haven't heard of the new consumer duty. So we asked advisors the top 5 business areas they expect to review or to change. And over a third of advisors expect to review or change processes that help to shape client communications, and a similar figure, advisor to client communications and advisor to client services. And coming in much lower at only 18% of advisors, they expect to review suitability of past product recommendations. And the same figure for C changes to how we as providers communicate to clients. But the good news is that a significant majority, sitting at 70% of advisors who expect to make changes to their business, say they're confident that they'll be ready for the new rules coming into effect. And only a small percentage, just 8%, are worried at all about the timescales involved. And when advisors were asked who they look to for help in preparing for the new duty, their network at 48% and product providers just like Royal London were clearly defined as primary sources of support. Without doubt, providers will have a role to play and offering to some support, but what help do the advisors we spoke to expect from providers just like us? Well, overall, advisors are looking to providers for general guidance on the changes, hints and tips on how to implement this best practice. Sharing information on what we as providers are doing to meet the new protocols, and to provide easy access to updated product literature, tools and support. And over the remainder of this webinar, Gregor and myself will share with you some of the support Royal London are already and planning to provide. So where does protection fit in? So let's start taking a look at where we think protection fits into the new consumer duty. If we revisit the cross-cutting rules that Gregor touched on a little earlier, so if you recall, they are that firms must act in good faith towards retail customers, avoid foreseeable harm to retail customers, enable and support retail customers to pursue their financial objectives. So I think for us, 5 things stood out immediately, and they are signposting, multi-benefit solutions, trust and nomination of beneficiaries, and tools and support services. So what we'd like to do is have a look at each of one of these in a little more detail. So first of all, let's have a look at signposting protection. Let's consider what signposting protection is. And for me personally, I think this is one of the most important directives. So what is signposting? Well, I think it's making a client aware that protection will be discussed at some point in this or another meeting. Leaving a client in a potentially vulnerable situation, so for example, having a large mortgage debt with no cover in place, is really not an option any longer. Now, that will also mean arranging just mortgage protection in my example, with no discussion around the risks a client would face should they become sick or injured, and how they would be able to protect their home, their family, and maintain their lifestyle is no longer satisfactory. Now, it may mean that you're going to have that discussion yourself and make some recommendations. But if not, for whatever reason, it might be time, resource, knowledge, or expertise. But if you're not going to have this important protection conversation, it's imperative that you signpost this client to an advisor who will. Now, this might be a protection expert in your company, but if not, please consider signposting to a protection expert either in your network or local area. And I think this also covers referring business when it's difficult to find cover. A protection expert will have the knowledge and expertise of specialist providers who might consider cover for a client, for example, with a chronic illness, a dangerous job, a hazardous pursuit, or complicated medical or family history. And finally, signposting a client to other services that your company offer, such as mortgages, retirement, or investment planning, can also satisfy the duty of care to our clients. So, what are the benefits of signposting to both you as the advisor and to your clients? Well, importantly, your clients are protected, or at the very least have made an informed choice about what a protection portfolio for their individual circumstances might need to look like. It may allow for you to focus on your key areas of expertise, and maybe allow an advisor where protection is their core business area to talk to your clients. And clients will continue to receive holistic advice about all areas of their financial well-being. And I think we'd all agree on this call this morning that a robust protection solution really needs advice. So signposting will reduce the risk of clients arranging cover for themselves that could be not fit for purpose. And if there are areas of protection you've previously not discussed, such as family income benefit or income protection, or even whole of life as an example, then commission splitting with a protection expert could provide an extra source of revenue for you and your firm. So I'm going to hand back to Gregor now to talk about one of the other options, multi-benefit solutions in respect of consumer duty.
Yeah, thanks, Shelley. I think it's a really important part of protection, as you say, there's signposting, and I've often heard that mantra: write it, refer it, don't ignore it. As long as the client's having that conversation somewhere down the line, that's a good outcome to begin with. So, if we are going to be protecting clients ourselves, we're having that conversation. Where might we initially steer the conversation towards, and does that look like a multi-benefit solution? So I guess let's begin at the beginning, because that tends to be the best place to start. Is what is a multi-benefit solution? Well, multi-benefit solutions are really a way of you providing your clients with ultimately a bespoke portfolio of protection products that cover them for a variety of different protection risks. And at Royal London, we call our multi-benefit protection solution a menu plan. And it is ultimately a way of you being able to mix and match different types of covers with one plan fee, one application, one direct debit, and one set of underwriting assessments. Now, what exactly do I mean by mixing and matching? Well, firstly, you can mix and match up to 10 different covers in one portfolio. And that could include a mixture of lump sum or income-based covers, such as a bit of income protection, maybe some critical illness, life or earlier kick, maybe some family income benefit, and there may even be a bit of standalone life cover within there. Of course, each different cover can be set up with different terms. There can be different lives covered across each. And the different covers within the portfolio, of course, can be placed within trust as well. But that is ultimately something we're going to look at in a few slides' time. But one of the most important aspects of this menu plan is their flexibility. I'm pretty sure we can all agree on our call this morning that life never stays the same for long. And we do believe that protection policies should be able to change as your client's lifestyle and situation change as well. And flexibility is such an important part of the way that the protection industry is really heading these days. So many plans can, of course, be beneficial for clients and their families, but they can also be very beneficial for you and your business. Now, we often refer to these as the 4 Rs at Royal London, and these are areas as to where menu plans can play a really important role in your business. So let's firstly take a look at risk. Now, risk, what we're meaning here is that we're allowing you to, the option, the ability to recommend solutions that provide some level of protection to suit your individual client's needs and budget, and ultimately lets them manage the risk when they need it most with multiple opportunities to make a claim. With the revenue approach, well, what we're doing here is by looking at that mix and match approach, you can create solutions that will be fit and tailored for your client's circumstances. We're tailoring that package, we're offering more protection solutions. As we said, you can have up to 10 different covers in one plan, hopefully creating more income for your business. And menu plans can play a really powerful role in making your advice harder to copy, making your advice and you stand out. Remember, your clients will have tailored protection that can change as their circumstances change, and ultimately if their needs change as well. Hopefully this means there'll be less chance that a client might cancel their policy, keeping them retained on your books, and hopefully avoiding those dreaded lapse rates as well. And it also will allow this opportunity to have future review meetings as well, and make sure that the protection policy we set up at one point is still valuable and it's still appropriate down the line, and maybe looking at having future conversations about different protection solutions that we can add or even remove. And finally, we've got reputation. So having cover that provides valuable financial assistance alongside the advice and support that you provide can only enhance your reputation as an advisor. Of course, financial assistance is the crux of the reason that we're talking protection in the first place, helping clients maintain their standard of living and repay debts. But of course, something that we're going to look at a little bit later on in our session are the valuable support services offered through Helping Hand. And what can that mean for clients who may not be making a claim on their product, their policy, but still want to have access to some form of service, some form of value of the policy right here, right now? We're going to take a look at that later on in our session. So understanding the benefits of a menu solution is of course one thing, but how do we bring it to life with clients? Now, what I want to do is just share a tool that we've got at Royal London, and it's about helping not just put protection on the agenda, but hopefully helping us position and talk confidently about menu plans. So the tool is called the Value of Menu tool, and you can find it on our advisor website. It's at the very bottom of our tools page. We're looking for the Value of Menu tool. Now, this tool is a fantastic tool to use early on in your protection conversations. And all we need to do is populate the tool with some very high level information. For instance, to get us started, all we need to know are how many people are applying for cover, does the client or are they planning to have any children, and do they have a mortgage? Now, again, depending on the answer, we may be asked to input the outstanding mortgage balance and term. And there's a couple of screens that follow this one that just ask for some information around your client's date of birth, gender, smoker status, salary, and occupation type as well. So I said nothing too thorough, some pretty high level information. And what we're presented with is two options. On the left-hand side, we've got a more traditional protection approach. And on the right-hand side, we've got a menu approach. Now, the traditional approach might be to arrange, for an example that we're looking at here, a bit of decrease in life, a decrease in term life or critical illness, maybe to repay the mortgage on death or diagnosis of a serious illness. It might be something that clients look towards if they're going online to get a protection policy themselves, that more traditional approach. Now, it's valuable cover. Of course, it's valuable cover. But when we compare it to the menu approach, which is on the right-hand side, we can see a number really stands out. And it's the likelihood of a claim occurring. On the right-hand side, with the menu approach, we can see there's a 63% chance of a claim being made on this policy. And on the left-hand side, just a 21% chance of a claim being made on this policy. Of course, there is a big difference in cost as well, and we can see that between both the traditional and menu approach. Now, what I'm able to do here is where it says see cover details at the very bottom in that purple box, we are able to press either of those on either of these options and be presented with, as the name suggests, more cover details. So let's have a look at some of the cover details on the menu approach. So for the menu option, when I go to the see more cover details, I'm actually presented now with 3 options. We've got Essential, Essential Plus, and Comprehensive. Now, we don't call our products this at Royal London, but it is just a way of getting to clients to see the different levels of cover and how flexible that they can be. So really 3 options here to illustrate the level of flexibility, as we said, and the covers within it. So let's start off with the essential option, which is the one on the far left. Now, this really shows the main protection solutions that we want to be considering based on the client's data that we've inputted. Now, the essential plus option in the middle, this increases the sum assured on both of the income protection policies up to the maximum available for their salaries, and the comprehensive option on the far right. This now provides us with enhanced children's cover on the critical illness cover policy, as well as a full term payment period on their income protection policy. So regardless how long they're off work sick, they'll be able to make a claim for that entire term of the plan. With the Essential and Essential Plus, we've gone for a 2-year benefit period and standard children's cover. Now, one of the key things that this tool can really help you do in light of this new consumer duty, you can actually download and save a report, and it's a basic summary of what the tool presents with us. So hopefully something you can download, save, and keep on file just to evidence the fact that we have had this conversation again about risks, likelihood of a claim, and the various different types of covers within there. And of course, from here, the orange button at the very bottom, you'll be able to go straight from the tool onto the quote and apply system if you wanted to look at starting to build a bespoke policy for your clients. So putting protection on the agenda is one thing. Making sure that we're able to make sure that clients can repay debts, maintain their standard of living when unexpected life events occur. That is ultimately the crux of protection, isn't it? Making sure that they can receive a financial payment when the worst happens. Now, with this new consumer duty shining a greater light on good customer outcomes, I'd like to pose a question to you, and feel free to put an answer in the chat box. Is what do you think a good protection outcome looks like in 2022? It might be very different for every client you come across, but making sure that conversation about protecting the client's finances at some stage, as Shelley alluded to earlier, either yourself or by signposting to a protection specialist, is that one way of helping clients to achieve good customer outcomes? And again, what might those outcomes be? It might be to ensure that maybe when a claim needs to be made on a life policy, that the client's family are able to use that money to pay off some or all of the mortgage. It might be to ensure that upon being diagnosed with, say, a serious illness, that a sum of money is paid out to help make adjustments to the home. It might even be that if clients are concerned that if they died, became seriously ill, that they are able to do what they like to do, make sure their family can do what they like to do when that event happens. And perhaps the client's got an inheritance tax concern. Maybe it's about arranging a protection policy to be set up to repay an IHT liability on death. And it might even be that clients are wanting to use the proceeds from their protection policy just to be able to use to provide their loved ones with a sum of money on death. Again, there's very different good outcomes for different clients. But I think regardless of why a protection policy is being discussed in the first place, its intention is to provide a good customer outcome when a bad situation arises. But does having a protection policy alone go far enough? Or is there anything else that we can do to ensure that that client's objectives are actually being met? So let's assume for a second we've written a life policy for a client. It's a single life policy. Now, what they want on their death is for the proceeds of that policy to pay out to their children. And upon that claim needing to be made, what do we think good customer outcomes would look like? Well, it might be what it says on these 3 purple boxes, probably making sure that there's no delay in payment. Does the client's children need access to the money immediately? Do they have to access that fund of money for a particular reason? Or would they be willing to wait weeks, maybe even months before they can access that money? We might want to make sure that we're avoiding IHT on the policy proceeds as well. So what does the client's estate look like now? There might not be any immediate IHT concerns just yet, but what if when a claim's made on a life insurance policy that sum of money's moved into the client's estate? Could we have just created or even added to an existing IHT concern? And of course, the client's objectives may have stated that they wanted their children to benefit from the proceeds of that policy, but how do they ensure that that actually happens? In fact, how do we ensure any of those outcomes actually happen? Well, this is really where trusts and beneficiary nomination are the gold standard of protection advice. And that is about making sure that we're using these processes. So let's take a trust for a moment. Why do we use trusts? Why do we write protection policies into trust? Well, there's really three main reasons for doing it. And you might have come across this little mantra at some point in your career, which is right time, right money, right hand. So what do we mean by right time? Well, I guess what would be a reasonable length of time to wait before a claim is paid? Weeks, months, years? When would beneficiaries need to fund something that is requiring that life policy proceed? Do they need it immediately, or could they potentially wait? What are some of the things that could stretch that length of time? Well, we know there's things that can cause delays, things like probate in England, Northern Ireland, and Wales, or if you're up in Scotland, you'll see this called confirmation, and that is a bit of a necessary evil. Now, we need to ensure that before policy proceeds will pay out on single life policies. Next, we've got right money. So what's the sum assured? How much is sufficient for that client? How much is enough? What do they need? And with the right money, where can we ensure that the inheritance tax concern is being factored in? Because the claim proceeds won't be subject to inheritance tax where the policy is placed within trust. But the money paid out from a policy that's not written into trust will fall into the client's estate, and again, potentially either creating or adding to an existing IHT concern. So for this reason, trusts can be a very efficient form of tax plan. And we've got right hands, finally right hands. So trust ultimately allow for greater control. So just have a think if we're chatting with clients, do they have any maybe second or third level beneficiaries in mind? Maybe if the money can't go to X, I'd like it to go to Y. Again, what allows them to have that level of control? And this is where trusts come into question. And are there any situations where I wouldn't like somebody to benefit from policy proceeds? Again, trusts allow that level of control. Now, I think trusts become especially important if we're dealing with clients who aren't married or in civil partnerships, as otherwise their assets may not transfer to the intended recipient. So how do we ensure that the clients achieve those three outcomes, right money, right hands, right time? Well, during the application stage at Royal London, you'll be presented with the option of either paying the client directly, so the money goes from the policy into their estate, or you can set up the policy in trust by completing the relevant trust form. And we've got a fantastic tool that Shelley's going to look at later that will help you direct to the correct trust document. Now, for the eagle-eyed amongst us, you might be saying, Gregor, there's a third box on the screen. What is that all about? Well, this is a relatively new feature at Royal London. It's called beneficiary nomination, and it's available on individual life or life or critical illness policies, and it's a way of letting clients access those good customer outcomes we just looked at. So beneficiary nomination, if the criteria is met, the client will have the option of naming up to 5 beneficiaries that will receive the payout from that the life policy if there's a claim when they pass away. Now, under this option, the proceeds paid out on claim go to the right hands at the right time, so we're not having to wait for probate or confirmation. And because through this beneficiary nomination process, the proceeds are still outside of the estate, that we are able to achieve that third outcome of right money. And again, it's all done for a very simple online process, meaning it'll be paid quickly with no complicated paperwork for the beneficiaries to complete it, what is ultimately a very difficult time. So, Shelley, I want to go back to the consumer duty research you mentioned earlier in the session. Now, you mentioned almost half of advisors who responded said that they would look towards product providers to help support them with this new consumer duty. In addition to what we've already looked at, what would you say are some of the other helpful tools available to advisors and their business when it comes to the consumer duty?
Thanks, Gregor. Yes, well, we do have quite a few tools on the Royal London Advisor website. A couple of them I'll just run through now that can help to have those real compelling protection conversations. So the first one that I wanted to look at is part of the marketing studio at Royal London. You can see the address there on the right-hand side of the screen. What you can see on the left-hand side is the one-page risk report that's looking at the risk, chance and probability of dying prematurely, of being diagnosed with a critical illness and having to take some time off work of 2 months or more off sick. And the orange figure in the circle sort of halfway down, that's the overall chance of making a claim in one of those areas before retirement age. Now, for the eagle-eyed, you can probably see as well that these are personalised. So this is for our client, Mark, and all of those statistics are bespoke for his age and retirement age. What you can also see in the red letters where it says your logo here is that you can actually download your company logo and contact details. It's really very easy to do. Sadly, I'm at an age where I'm really rubbish at IT, and even I can do this. You need a JPEG of your logo just once, and then everything you prepare will have your details on. So for me personally, I think this is one of the most powerful things we have on the Royal London Advisor side, and it's really got to help you have those conversations outside of just cheap and cheerful life cover. Now, the second thing that I wanted to look at is our lifestyle calculator. Now, the reason for this is to look to try for those clients who are struggling to afford that protection solution. This is to help them see that maybe just making a few tweaks to their incidental expenditure could find them a budget for protection. So as you can see on the left hand side, there's a series of things that are quite incidental expenses. Probably pre-COVID we paid cash for them, now we probably do contactless. And I've just set up one of these, an example on my life when I'm traveling around the country doing this job. So I might get 3 takeaway coffees, I might get 3 snacks or soft drinks. When I finally get home on a Friday, I might get a takeaway meal. Over that week, I might have 3 glasses of wine, and as a treat at the weekend, I might buy a fairly decent bottle of wine at £8. Now, if we press calculate on those expenses, you can see that that is quite startling in that it's just under £300 a month. Now, I think you'll agree, I'm hardly living the dream there, but it's amazing how quickly those little luxuries add up. Now, the idea is that we would look to reduce some of those. So let's do that for me. Let's reduce those takeaway coffees down to 1. Let's reduce those snacks by 1. I'll also reduce those glasses of wine down, and maybe I'll buy a cheaper bottle of wine at £5. Now let's press recalculate again, and you will see that's come down to £224, which is actually a saving of over £70 a month. Now, I think you'll agree, I haven't spoilt my life there, but suddenly with a few tweaks, I might have found myself a budget of about £70 that would well go towards a protection solution for me and my family. So I'd urge you to have a look at this lifestyle calculator, look at your own expenditure. I think, as you can see, I was shocked. I think that you'll be shocked as well. So if we both are, I'm sure that your clients are going to be as well. Now, the next thing I wanted to look at is a really great feature on our application process called Send to Client. As always, we want to make the application process as easy as possible. And with Send to Client, you can send an application to your client to complete those really critical medical details. We all know how important it is to get those right. So they can complete the details in privacy at a time and place that suits them, and you can view the progress of individual lives. So I'd just like to ask you to listen just for a couple of minutes to a little bit more detail about how Send to Client actually works.
Our Send to Client feature makes the application process even easier for you and your clients. After entering some basic information, you have the option to send an application to your client to complete their medical details. This feature can be activated at any stage, so you can partially complete sections first or send the full question set to your client. Your client will receive an email from us and will be asked to log on securely using their name and date of birth. They can complete their details in privacy at a time and place that suits them. And joint lives are sent separate links, making the process even quicker. Our Send to Client tracker gives you full visibility, and you can access an application at any time. You can see whether your client has accessed an application since you sent it, how many sections have been completed. You can even click in to view it, so if your client is stuck, you can help. And you can view the progress of individual lives. Once your client has completed their information, the application is returned to you, making sure you maintain complete control. And it is you we will give our final decision to, so you can relay this to your client. We won't ask for GP or bank details until you and your client have decided to go ahead, and we know that these are needed. It's you that will then complete these final details before sending the completed application to us, so you're in the driving seat every step of the way. It really is that simple.
So, as my colleague says, it is really as simple as that. So again, if you're unfamiliar with Send to Client, I'd urge you to have a look after this webinar. Now, let's move on to the next section. Trusts are mentioned quite often during the Consumer Duty consultation paper. And when I talk to advisors about writing plans in trust, one of the things outside of knowledge and expertise, which of course we would be delighted to help you with, is one of the things that stops advisors is that they're worried about not getting the right trust form. We all at different providers have different trust forms, and I know it can be quite complicated. So one of the things we have on our advisor website is Find the Right Trust. Now, I'm just going to run through just to show you how simple it is to use. There's just a few questions, and then I'll show you that it will show you the right trust for that particular circumstance. So let me show you what I mean. There's just a few questions. The first one being, is this plan a relevant life plan? Because for those of you who are in the business protection arena, you'll know that that's a separate trust form. So we're going to say no here. It will ask, is the plan a business menu plan? And again, we're going to say no. It will then ask, is the plan owned by more than one person? And for this, we're going to say no again. It will then ask, is the plan just life cover? And just for ease today, we're going to say yes. And then most importantly, it will ask, do the clients want to be able to change the beneficiaries in the future? And I think for most clients, the answer would be yes. And you can see here that we suggest your client uses, in this case, a gift trust discretionary. And there's also a link to a PDF to make sure, doubly make sure that we've got the correct trust form. So again, I think this negates the problem of not having the right trust form and make sure that the correct documentation is filled in first time. Now let's move away from trust for a moment and look at pre-sales underwriting. So as we've said, getting accurate indicative underwriting decisions is very, very important. And we want to make things as easy as we can for you by making sure that you get this decision at the touch of a button. So with this pre-sales underwriting tool, you can move easily between the pre-sales tool and the quote and apply system without needing to re-enter login details, which does make it much easier. And the tool uses the same underwriting rules engine as our online service. So literally, you do need to just put in a few basic details. And the joy of this pre-sales underwriting tool is that it will cover a cocktail of risk. So if someone has a hazardous job and maybe some family history, it will look at covering those two areas of concern at the same time. So again, as we move on, support services are mentioned quite frequently during the Consumer Duty consultation paper. Now, we're very proud at Royal London of our Helping Hand support service. And we think that, you know, we are reliant on you, ladies and gents, as advisor, to spread the word and talk to your clients about these great support services that come with an awful lot of the protection policies in the market today. So we think it will, it will demonstrate the fact that your clients can use these support services on a day-to-day basis. It will show the value of your advice and also give clients probably quite a lot more than they were expecting from their policy. So our Helping Hand support services has recently had some enhancements, but our Helping Hand for recovery remains unchanged. But we've enhanced this, as I say, by offering and adding some new online wellbeing services to help plan owners reach their health goals and really to help stop small health issues becoming much bigger problems. So these wellbeing services are available now to all new customers who take out a Royal London protection plan through an advised route, and they'll be available to existing customers very soon too. So for those clients also with a business protection plan, on top of the support I've just mentioned, there is extra support for your business owner clients too, such as an independent legal helpline to give advice on all aspects of employment law, and access to a recruitment specialist to help keep businesses running if a key employee is ill or can't work for some time. So let's have a quick look now at the enhancements to Helping Hand for Wellbeing. So as soon as a new plan goes on risk, your client will be invited, it's not obligatory, but they'll be invited to complete a brief digital health questionnaire created by our partners Live Smart. At the end of this, Live Smart will give them a personalised health report and full access to the wellbeing services. This health report will include tips on how to improve or maintain their health and also provide recommendations for the wellbeing services that can best support them with their goals and also help them understand how small changes could really help to improve their health. Live Smart are the glue that connects all our wellbeing partners, and I'll run through those in just a moment. But it's created by NHS doctors and dietitians, and Live Smart's personalised recommendation engine analyses each customer. It looks at lifestyle, nutrition, sleep, exercise, any musculoskeletal or issues, and mental health data to give customers a real personalised health report containing a real unique picture of their health. And we know that knowing what steps to take first can be quite tricky. So Live Smart's personalised digital health report contains clear recommendations and educational information that empowers customers to take small steps that will add up to make a big difference. Their engine also helps to simplify and improve health navigation. For example, what step should I take next? It will signpost and provide a slick and easy access to other wellbeing partners via their to-do page. The order in which our other wellbeing partners appear on a customer's to-do page is based on their answers, with their key area of focus being top of the list. So let's just look at these on-being support services. Health Hero is a 24/7 access to GP consultations by experienced NHS practicing doctors. Thrive Mental Wellbeing is a mental wellbeing app approved by the NHS to improve mental wellbeing. Your client will receive personalised recommendations to help prevent, detect, and also manage any mental health conditions. PAI, Personal Activity Intelligence, you can use this app to get your heart health score and link up your wearable devices such as Fitbit, Apple Watch or Amazon Fit to measure the impact of physical activity on your heart. And finally, Track Active Me. This app was actually created by physiotherapists and will help assess musculoskeletal problems such as muscle, joint or spinal pain, and also give physiotherapy advice and personalised exercises. And remember, as we move to the next screen, the recovery side of Helping Hand remains unchanged and will continue to provide our customers who experience serious illness, injury, mental health challenges or bereavement the additional support they may need. Either from the day the plan starts, customers can call us direct, or when they're making a claim, our claims team will mention the support available, or indeed via a pathway from those wellbeing services I just went through. So let's move away now from those tools and support and look at how we can put this into practice. So just at this moment, we're unsure as to how the FCA will monitor and keep track of the implementation of Consumer Duty. But here is just a short list of the support that's already available on the Royal London Advisor website, and some easy recommendations we think will be prudent to start putting into your processes. So first of all, the Marketing Studio Risk Report. I looked at this just a little earlier. Not only will this demonstrate you've had the conversation of things such as critical illness and income protection, but it will also show that you've taken the trouble to create a personalised risk report demonstrating the risk, chance and probability of making a claim. Reasons why paragraphs. This will help you explain the reasons for recommending a Royal London plan. We've produced various paragraphs that describe our company and features and benefits of our products, so you can choose the sections that are particularly relevant to your client's protection portfolio. Trust Toolkit, as Gregor touched on a little while ago, we've got a range of tools that will help you promote the financial benefits of trust, as well as support in finding the right trust that I just looked at a few slides ago. So Helping Hand, as I just talked to you about, Helping Hand is included with all our advice protection plans, and you'll find a whole host of client-facing literature and sales aid to demonstrate the benefits that your clients can use day to day. And I think this not only shows the value of your advice, but also gives your clients much more than they might expect from a protection policy. So evidence of reviews. It seems to me that planning a future protection review is the right thing to do for your clients. In many clients' lives over a period of 12 months, there will be changes that could trigger the need to review their protection cover. This could be starting a new job, moving to a bigger property, whether that be owner-occupied or in the private rental sector, maybe getting married, planning a family, or even sadly getting divorced. All of these could require a change in protection needs to ensure their family, their home and their lifestyle are adequately protected. Research and quotes. Of course, you will document your research and provide quotes for your chosen provider. Business Health Check Report. Now, for those of you who are Royal London supporters, then we would be delighted to supply you with and work with you analysing a report, taking a closer look at your firm's protection business. It will look at such things as product mix, lapse rates, how successfully clients are engaged, and how robust your process is for collecting that critical medical and lifestyle information at application stage. And finally, signposting that we mentioned right at the start of this webinar, ensuring your client gets a detailed protection recommendation, whether it's you or another advisor that discusses this with them. And of course, documenting this process and, if applicable, documenting the referral. Now, that brings us towards the end of our webinar this morning. Those learning objectives that Gregor mentioned at the beginning, I'm pretty confident that we will have achieved. So I'll leave those on the screen for you to look at for just a minute or so. Just to remind you as we come to the end, please look out for your post-webinar email, which will include a link to a really short question and answer section. And once this has been completed, you will receive your CPD for the time for this morning's webinar. So I'll end with our Royal London Advisor Protection address just there on the screen now. All it takes is for me really, on behalf of myself and Gregor, to say a big thank you for taking the trouble to listen to us this morning. And I think let's have a look if we have any questions just before we sign out today. I think there are just a couple of questions actually. So the first one, if I can just read that question. The first one, if a client tells us that they're not able to afford any protection or protection over and above life cover to protect a mortgage, and we know that this really isn't enough to cover and ensure a good financial outcome in the future, how can we make sure the consumer duty is still adhered to? Gregor, what's your thoughts on that?
So yeah, it's a really good question. So just to familiarise myself, so if a client tells us they're not able to afford any protection or protection over and above the existing, so it's a great question. I think probably the first thing that comes to mind for me would be to probably refer back to the lifestyle calculator firstly that you mentioned, Sherry. I think just drilling down as far as we possibly can to make sure that that is the scenario. If budget is tight, then of course, you know, the answer will come at one point to say that the budget is tight. But I think if we can use that lifestyle calculator to try and see where even a slight bit of saving could potentially be made, would probably be the first instance. And again, you showed a very basic reduction in some of the lifestyles that you might be accustomed to on a weekly basis, and that was around about £70 odd saving there. So yeah, I think first port of call, try the lifestyle tool, see if there's any additional savings that could be made that could then be channeled towards a protection solution. I also would probably suggest the risk report as well. You know, that is just another way of trying to really highlight the probability, likelihood and chance of a claim being made. So it might even be where there is a little bit of budget there, but the clients maybe just are still a little bit unsure as to whether they need the likes of income protection or critical illness. So I'd probably refer back to the risk report as well, and just, you know, try and visualize that risk, try and visualize that probability and chance to the client, and it might be what sort of turns them over to the idea that actually maybe we can make a little bit of adjustment, a little bit of room for something over and above the mortgage protection. So yeah, for me, I'd say risk report and the lifestyle calculator could be a good starting point.
Mm-hmm. The only other things I'd add to that are maybe sort of tweaking under a menu plan your recommendations. So maybe look at providing critical illness on an income basis, maybe through family income benefit rather than as a lump sum. That can reduce the premium. And maybe looking at some low cost options on products such as income protection, providing a shorter benefit payment period can also bring down the premium to try and fit a client's budget while providing really valuable cover. And of course, to stress to your clients that, you know, menu plan like the Royal London menu plan is completely flexible. So at the next review, then there's time to increase cover or add some covers that were outside of budget at this time. So hopefully we've answered that question. One of the other questions, if I pose this to you, Gregor, you mentioned at the start there was a deadline for the rules. Can you remind me of those dates?
Yeah, of course. So we did kind of fly past that bit at the beginning. So I think the first thing to mention is this is all still based on the existing consultation that the FCA have just closed a couple of months back. So what we're going to be seeing from the FCA at the end of July, first and foremost, is the final rules. So there'll be a lot of announcement from various providers, us included, around what those rules mean and what they look like nearer the time. So final rules will be announced at the end of July this year. And we did also allude to that roughly 9 months implementation period. So as we're aware at the moment at time of broadcasting, the rules are all expected to be implemented within businesses and firms at the end of April 2023. So that's about a little over 9 months away, or just little under 9 months away, I should say. So yeah, final rules announced at the end of July this year. Implementation is expected to be done and dusted by the end of April next year. So a couple of key dates just for the diary there.
Shelley, I'll just pick up a couple of final questions as I can see them coming in. We've got one here from Steve. So he says, obviously ensuring clients are protected is an essential conversation to be had, but how do we win against the argument about the cost of living? Clients are more concerned about costs now more than ever before. I think, Steve, a point that's made quite a lot from advisors I've spoken to, of course, cost of living and protection are two interesting areas. And I think one of the big areas is clients that are looking towards trying to save a little bit of money, and their intention might be to make that saving through their protection policy. So I would say some areas or some tips to try and, I guess, talk protection in this inflationary environment. If you're reviewing a client situation, if you're having a conversation with them and this comes up, is it just worth reminding them why they took out the policy to begin with? A gentle reminder of what they've got access to from their existing policy might ease some concerns about where that monthly direct debit is going. I think as well as that, reinforcing the value of policy that they have. So Shelley mentioned earlier about the helping hand support. Is that one way of helping them see actually there's more than just this financial payout that I've got access to? There's something that I can use on a day-to-day basis, be it a virtual GP or access to a dedicated nurse. So again, it's one thing to help just see that value. I think future-proofing, so if we're talking with new clients and this challenge comes up, indexation can be a really good thing to bring to light, again, particularly in the moment where the rising cost of living is something you can't ignore. So I think talking about, if in future a client had to go off work sick or make a claim on a life or a critical illness policy, could indexation be a way of making sure that it maintains real value over time? I think also offering lifestyle reviews. So something that we offer at Royal London is a lifestyle review. So if a client's made a lifestyle change, so it could be an occupation, maybe a change to recreational activities, maybe they've stopped smoking, and you think that reduces their likelihood of making a claim, you can ask us to review the terms of the policy, and that may well result in a reduction in premium. So again, cost of living, if one way of helping reduce the cost could be that lifestyle review, then it's worth looking at clients and their cases that could access that benefit. And I think finally, probably discussing the long-term implications of cancelling. I think the most significant implication of cancelling the policy now is, of course, how would the client be able to repay their mortgage or maintain their standard of living if the worst happened? But if they cancel now and maybe a few years down the line thought about taking out a new policy, generally speaking, the older they are, the more expensive the policy will be. So just, again, having that consideration as to the longer term implication might be another way of stopping them from cancelling the policy now. So yeah, definitely a very pertinent topic. And I'll take one more question here, which is from Adnan, and it says, I've read some of the new consumer duty and see reference to vulnerable customers made throughout. If clients are classed as vulnerable, what are Royal London doing to help us as advisors work with these vulnerable clients? So as you say, it's vulnerable clients as mentioned a number of times throughout the new consumer duty, and there's a huge focus on it. I think the key thing is to make sure, as we looked at earlier in those steps, is to have a process in place to engage with those vulnerable clients. And that could be all matter of different things. It could be about the different types of communication that you provide vulnerable clients, the surroundings that you have those meetings in, and ultimately, I think making sure that the product, the service that they receive is as best as possible for them. In terms of what we're doing to help support this, I think a lot of the tools and services that we offer and other providers do offer will definitely go a long way to helping dealing with vulnerability. The one thing that really stands out for me, a bit of a niche one. So if you've got a client who has made a claim, or their family's made a claim, let's say if it's a life policy and maybe their partner is now putting through the claim, their partner you could very well consider as a vulnerable client. They are potentially suffering financial. It could be a detriment of financial issues, and many others. Just one thing I would say is, where a client has had to make a claim, we will always notify the advisor that claim is being made. We'll always notify the advisor on file. So again, if the client is, or if the client's family is coming to us direct to make that claim, we would notify the advisor on file. So it gives you, the advisor, that opportunity to reach out to the client's family or the client himself if they're making the claim. And again, hopefully is a way to help you and your business engage with that client and their family. So a bit of a niche answer to the comment, but again, another really important one to consider is that vulnerable client concern. I think in terms of time, we'll probably finish off there with the questions. I will, as I said earlier, reiterate the point that if you do have additional questions, do pop them into the chat box. We will be taking every other question that we haven't been able to cover in our session today offline, and we'll be following up with you very, very shortly. I think all that is really left for me to say, and I know Shelley said it earlier, is just a huge thank you for joining us today for this session. Hopefully there's been a couple of little useful points made. And again, as we iterated earlier, if you do have questions after our session today, do get in touch with your usual Royal London contact. So I'll just say a massive thank you for joining, and have a fantastic rest of the day.